Hotapu everyone. I wish to share with you some of my recent visions from the trance state about creation, and what I saw and what was revealed truly astounded me. And I wished to record this research and this investigation online for posterity and for the empowerment of my kingdom. On the screen, you see here a bubble. And this is a hieroglyph, very similar to a hieroglyph in ancient Egyptian. And I'll show you in a moment that hieroglyph, which is here in Wallace Budge Dictionary. And we see here the letter N and the word Nu. Nu. And we see here this, it's called a water jar. And Nu means a mass of water. It has a water with a wave here, waves here, inundation. So this word Nu is a bubble. Now, Nu again was called the mass of water which existed in primeval times, the celestial waters. The deified primeval water whence everything came. This is saying that, as according to the ancient Kamatic creation story, all life began in the oceans of Nu, or Nun, the great sea of space. And the blacks of the Nile Valley saw space as a giant ocean, a very subtle ocean, but very similar to water. And they called it Nu. Here we see Nunu, the sky god, or the god of space. And in this particular rendition, you see two water jars or two bubbles and a Fibonacci spiral right here between them. So I began studying these words very carefully in relationship to the ancient texts of creation, where the universe came out of Nu, or the Nun, where the word none comes from, nothing, meaning no specific shapes, like a blank canvas. And so, as I began to delve into these bubbles of creation, more and more things became revealed. The first thing is that the Kamau say that the Creator spoke or sang the universe into being. So this implies sound waves. If you look at the word for Nu, the great original ocean here, Nu or Nu, you'll see it has a spiral, a Fibonacci spiral in particular. It has waves. Here we have bubbles, bubbles, and waves. Okay? So we're seeing something building here that the blacks of the Nile Valley knew about creation. That A, water is the beginning of all life, and that water makes bubbles, and that bubbles are linked to sound. That's the beginning of the premise. Now, this particular detail here, we see here, this glyph here, it's kind of a flat, skinny rectangular shape here. This word implies a surface of a pool of water, the surface of a pool or body of water, or a membrane, the membrane part of water. We'll come back to that in a moment. Okay, so here we have our bubble. Okay, and did you know that there is no such thing as a sound wave? when you speak, when you're hearing my voice, you have perhaps been told that sound moves in waves. This is not true at all. Sound does not move in waves, it moves in bubbles. That's why many cartoonists, when they draw the person speaking, it's drawn in a bubble, a thought bubble or a speech bubble. That instinct of cartoonists, or what we call ancient hieroglyphists of modern times, is a correct instinct. Once again, art predicts science and reveals science. What I mean here is this. Let's look at this graphic about sound and sound waves and sound bubbles. So it says here, this is a graphical representation of sound waves, quote unquote, is why the term sound waves is used, causing the false impression that sound travels in a wave. Now, this is, let's say, a sound, the sound ah. Okay? Now, what actually happens from your mouth and nose, which is shown here, that when you speak or you vibrate your vocal cords, it creates an actual sphere of sound that is generated from your mouth and your nose, and that sound bubble, every word you say, every sound you hear, are bubbles floating around you, forms geometric structures within itself on its surface. Okay, so here we're seeing bubbles of sound, and the vibrations of your words create structure. Recall here the hieroglyph. We have bubbles and waves, and here we have water waves and a spiral structure. Okay? So, going back to the scientific model, and recall I did a video, my previous video, talked about that the gods are not gods, they are formulas of science. And I take that understanding of the word neteru or neterut, god or goddess, very literally. So because I understand that, when I'm studying a neteru or neterut, a so-called goddess, I begin to dive into that statue of that particular neteru or their name and look for formulas, scientific formulas. So studying Nuit and the word Nu, I began to research and get inklings about the formulas revealed by that word, that God, so to speak, about creation, water, and sound. So here we have a nu, a bubble, which is the word nu. But what's happening as you speak here, we're going to zoom into this bubble here, this word bubble, and break it down. So here we have the bubble. It's going to be cut in half. We have the top and lower hemispheres. Let's look here at these little rows, these orbits, so to speak, within the sound bubble. So here we have rarefaction of air molecules here, compression of air molecules here, they're getting squeezed together. Okay, and then we have areas in which in the air the sound expands spherically and moves at around 700 miles per hour. When you speak, the sounds move at around 700 miles per hour and expands in a bubble shape. Okay, so here we have the sonic event, the word ah, the sound ah, okay? And here we have the period peak length from peak to peak. And this peak shows you areas of compression and areas of decompression. Now, if you were to look at these rings of compression, decompression, compression, decompression, and flatten that to a two-dimensional form, it looks like a wave. You see where you have peak of compression, okay, and then lowering of compression and bottoming out of compression. And then rising of compression, peak of compression, lowering, bottoming out. So this snake, this wave, is really identifying or graphically showing in 2D a 3D event. Okay, and there is a mathematical formula for Nut. Nu, the god Nu. Okay, I won't go into this formula at this point, but this formula here is the exact same thing as the deified primeval water from whence everything came, the god of the original waters. Nu's formula is here. Okay? Now, let's look at the word Nu more in detail as a scientist, because this is how the blacks of the Nile Valley taught their children science formulas. They were very graphic people. Black people are much more artistically driven. We like to speak in our native cultural expressions through images, words as pictures. And of course, the Kamal preserved the most advanced pictographic language in the world. So let's take a look, now that we have an idea that creation came from water, and there were sound waves, and that sound waves move in bubbles, not waves. Okay? Let's see what else the word Nu means. Let's flip the page here. And here, a sky goddess. This is an important one, Nuit. The two halves of the sky. Now, Budge here says, the author of this dictionary, that it's day or night sky, which is also true. But it also refers to the atmosphere, the ocean, the moisture in the atmosphere, which is like a very light cloud-like ocean, and then the heavy waters of the Earth's seas, the two halves of the watery sky. Nu, the Nile god, Hapi, the lord of all gay people, is talked about at the beginning of life. Okay, let's go on. The god of an open door in the duat, or in the primal or subconscious world. A water god. A god who gave water to the dead. Okay, let's move on. Let's find some keywords. Overflowing or brimming. Here's a key dynamic. Village, hamlet, town, a city, a community, or a settlement. Citizens, townsmen, townsfolk. This is implying that bubbles, that sounds, create communities. They don't come as one little bubble. You will get a community of bubbles as you're seeing here. And you see this is actually showing a bubble with internal structure, much like this image from a scientific equation. Okay, so just bear with me for one moment while I go through the word meanings, and I'll bring it all together in a few moments. Okay, now, here we have Nut, the god of a circle, a bubble. Nuti, a singing goddess. Now, all things came from Nu, the water. And here we have Nuti, a singing goddess. Okay, Nut, a pyramid town. So we're linking Nut and water and sound and resonance to pyramids, and the pyramid chambers are extremely resonant. They were actually these sound chambers, these acoustic chambers, which made intensely powerful sound bubbles. And these sound bubbles will create shapes. So it's called cymatics. Okay. Now we're going to come to this word nu, but it has this new glyph we're seeing here. This little glyph, which is a tool for shaping wood, like a whittling tool. Okay, a shaping tool. We see it here. Okay, we see it here. We see this glyph appearing along the words of nu. Okay. I want to mention back here very quickly, this one, Nu and Ra. This is a god who gave water to the dead, but note it has the word Ra in there, the god of light. This becomes important in a few minutes as well. I'm slowly building a case. So we have here the word Nu, Nunu, and it has sunlight. We have water, bubbles, and light. Light arising or shining from or within water. Okay. We have the winter solstice linked to this word nu. The word nu means to tie, to bind together, a rope or thread, to keep guard over, to watch, to tend. So there's some idea of perception here. We keep going on. We have an I here, a guide, leader, director. Let's try a few more entries. Nu, to see, to look at, to observe, the eyes to glance. Okay, nu, a ring, a circle, a round object, a bubble. The secret shrine of Osar. Osar is your DNA. The post on which a door turns. Okay, this implies a vortex, a kind of rotational vortex idea. Here we have nu, an adze, an axe, a sword, any cutting tool or a shaping tool. Okay, a tool for opening the mouth of the gods. A dagger, a spear, a pike, a tool, a weapon. Nu, to acclaim, to beseech, to adore, to speak. Okay, and let's go to, there is a word here, an herb. An herb, it implies a kind of healing. The word nu also means a salve or balm. That's somewhere along here. And the nuanwa, nuawau, to tremble or quake. Now, here it is, nua, an herb used in medicine. A jackal god in the duat. Okay, now, what do all these things mean? There's something called somnoluminescence. Somnoluminescence, meaning if you collapse an underwater bubble with a sound wave, light is produced, and no one quite yet knows why. This is an actual fact. You can YouTube scientific videos about sonoluminescence, and what's happening is you have a bubble in water, and they shoot a simple sound wave in the jar. Note, in a jar. The word nu had that jar there that's filled with bubbles, we're saying. And you shoot a sound into the bubble. The bubble creates what they call a star in a jar. It actually luminesces. And they measured the surface temperature of this tiny bubble floating in the middle of just a jar, and they found it was 10,000 degrees of heat. They're now researching if the core of the star in a jar, the water bubble that becomes light, is powerful enough, and they're showing evidence that it is so, to create fusion. The sun, the surface is cooler, the center is hotter, and it's at the center of the sun, of a star, where fusion occurs. What I'm saying is that water, bubbles, if the singing goddess sings to them, or the creator sings to them. The bubbles, the bubbles will luminesce. They will expand at such a rapid rate, then they collapse at a very fast rate. As a collapse from the sound wave that breaks them, penetrates them, as a collapse, they compact at such a fast, high speed of intensity, they explode with light. They become very hot and explode into a tiny speck of light, which resembles a star in a jar. Nut is the goddess of stars. She's the star goddess. But this was not a metaphor. The Kamal were saying the mother of the cosmic ocean made bubbles to which she sang. They exploded, then collapsed. They would expand with the sound wave, breaking them up, and then they would collapse again. They would collapse, making a intense heat at their center, and they would luminesce, light up like stars. So, now, I wish to talk about the glyph we saw about the upper and lower skies, this one, Nuti. The word T means double, and the word Nu would mean heaven or skies. Now, recall I discussed, and we see it here in this glyph here, the sky goddess Nut. Okay. And we see here reversed, this kind of flat symbol here means the vault of heaven. And we see reversed vaults, upside down vaults. So when I was in meditation about these glyphs, and these double sky glyphs here, the two skies, I was actually communing with the gay ancestors, the gatekeeper ancestors of ancient Kemet. They revealed to me this lower sky represents the oceans. This inverted sky would be the seas of the earth, and this upper sky would be the atmosphere. So we've learned with this pyramid, for example, which is a structure that is highly resonant, these sonic chambers. And again, we saw here how water made light. A sun, this is Nu and Ra, made a star which exuded light, that water bubbles collapse and become luminescent. There are some fantastic YouTube videos that show this in the laboratory. But let's talk about these two waters, the upper and lower waters, the upper and lower skies. Okay. Let's talk about life on Earth, how it began. We all know it began in the seas, we call the lower sky. But how? Well, you have to understand sound waves. Now, the seas are moving because the Earth spins and the moon pulls on the oceans. So there's the tides, they're moving, and they're creating bubbles down there. Okay, now, the upper sky had lightning, which is very loud. And when you study sonics, you learn, for example, about white noise, which has all the range of sound waves, but they're not organized. They're just kind of random. But they have the full spectrum of sonic waves. Okay? Whereas music occurs when those waves become very coherent, very ordered, very structured. When you look at a beach, you see white waves, the foamy waves. And if you were to listen to the sound of those foamy white waves with a sonoscope, you would find they contain white noise, which may be why they are actually white, foamy forms. Okay, now, Water is one of the best conductors of sound known to humanity. Water conducts sound very, very efficiently. Now, we have, let's say, the white noise of the atmosphere, and we have the thunderous sound of lightning itself, lightning and thunder. Imagine this primordial Earth. No life forms as we know of them yet, just water and sky, the two seas, we would say, because the atmosphere is very moist. That's why Shu and Tefnut are together. Shu is the god of the atmosphere, and Tefnut is moisture. These are the two gods of creation. Okay, so we have the white noise of the atmosphere. We have the water, a great sonic chamber, a sonic resonator. When sound would go through the oceans, at the top of the oceans, or the top range of the ocean, the higher frequencies of sound are muted out. When you go deeper into the mid-oceans, now the middle range of white noise is muted out. What happens in the end, at the bottom of the sea, only the low frequency sounds remain. So at the bottom of the sea, what you hear most of are low frequency sounds, very long sound waves, so to speak. Okay, now, it has been found in sonic engineering that those sound waves create very clear structures in matter, what's called cymatics. One structure they find often is the phi ratio, what's called the golden ratio, the golden mean, or the five-pointed star. All living creatures possess, to some degree or the other, the phi ratio. Every single living creature reveals phi on some level of its structures, because this is the shape, the phi ratio, which is 1.618, or the best symbol of a phi ratio is the five-pointed star, which Nuit is symbolized by. The star goddess is the five-pointed star. At the bottom of the sea, when the sky god sang into the oceans of Nut, we say Ra, or lightning, sang to the sea. At the bottom of the sea, it structured matter, structured molecules down there into the phi ratio. And the phi is called the golden spiral, the golden ratio. And we saw that spiral often in this word for nu. We found it, let's see if we can find it again here. Well, that's nim. Let's see where is it again? There we go, nu, this golden ratio Fibonacci spiral. At the bottom of the water jar, which would be the ocean, the lower sky. And so from that deep, deep level of the ocean, where the lowest tones are predominant, small particles form the phi ratio, and that spawned life. How do we know this? Well, the word nu also means a child, a son, a babe. What is a babe? The beginning of life. And notice it has, interestingly, 3 stacks of water jars, 3 levels of the ocean. The upper ocean filtering out the high frequencies, the middle ocean filtering out the middle frequencies, and the bottom of the sea keeping the deep frequencies, which create the phi spiral, and a child was born. Life began. The word nu means of, the genitive, or of, or belonging to them, that we are all of water. We all were born and made in water. We all belong and are of water, and that water created actual life. Astounding that the black people of the Nile Valley of Africa knew this and would preserve this information, these formulas, in their language. That's why I've said many times the ancient language of the blacks of Egypt is the most powerful language in the world. There is no language that can match its genius, power, and revelatory capacities. So, we saw many things today. We first learned that sound comes in bubbles, not waves. In air, sound expands spherically at around 700 miles per hour. That's why underwater, also, when you speak, bubbles come out, not waves, but bubbles. In the lower sea, just like in the upper sea, the atmosphere. We learned that sound waves shot through bubbles will create light, tiny little stars. So, light is born out of water. The Kamal would say, Nut is the mother of Ra, or that Ra was born from Nut, or Ra was born from Nu. That's the actual text. It's not metaphoric, it's literal. From the water, called Nu or Nut, Ra, a star, is born as a bubble. Now, I mentioned in the beginning about the surface of the bubble. This is very important because the surface, when you speak in the sound wave, here it's showing the surface of the bubble is scintillating, it's vibrating, it's trembling, and it's making these shapes. This is the surface, not the interior. We're seeing all these forms and shapes are on the surface of the bubble. On the surface of every word you say are these shimmering effects. If we go to the glyphs of Nu, we should expect, if we suspect that this premise is accurate, the scientific premise of Nu as sound waves, bubble, the source of light, we should find something that reveals trembling or vibrating. We saw the vibrating wave here and how that wave shapes things. But let's see if there's a word more directly linked to vibrating. Let's see, can we find it here? Here it is. We saw it before. Nuawa, to tremble, to quake. Okay, and it has a sound wave, and it has a kind of tied rope. This tied rope links a lot to string theory. I won't go into that part in this video, but that string theory is really a kind of bubble theory, and how string theory and Calabi-Yau spaces work together to create quarks and particles. That's a whole other conversation. And we saw before the word Nu had the idea here of to see, to look, to observe. This moves us into how sound waves structure through observation, what's called the double slit experiment. If you've seen the video, you can probably watch it on YouTube, called What the Bleep, where they discuss when an observer looks at a particle, it behaves differently if you're not observing it, and how observation affects how things structure or destructure, if a thing will be a particle or a wave. That's a whole other level of this that the Kamau encoded in their word Nu. Why the word Nu means water, bubbles, a celestial light, oceans, and a ring, a circle, or to perceive, to see, or to observe the eyes or glances, or speech. So This is just an introduction to this quote-unquote God. You see why I said in my previous video that I posted just earlier today, in fact, that do not look at the Neteru as gods or goddesses, but as science formulas or parts of your brain. I was not joking about that. And here at the Golden Beetle, the center of the resurrection of the gay dynamics of ancient Kemet, the gatekeepers, this is a house of scientific divine research. And this video was to show the world a little piece of some of the scientific researches being done in my kingdom. And I'll be doing very soon classes, first for the Black gay community, of the implications of these discoveries. How we can use these facts being revealed about sound and bubbles and creating light and creating life and healing. We saw that the word Nuit meant an herb used in medicine. How to heal with sound, how to create light or energy with sound. This is an energy source. The implications of this is that through bubbles and water, you can create tiny suns, tiny stars, or a kind of free energy. And I'm asserting to you all that the ancestors revealed to me how the Giza Plateau, which sits upon an aquifer, a body of water in the bedrock, and the word for pyramid is Merkut. Mer means water, where the word maritime comes from, marine, and Kut means fire. And we saw that the word Nu dealt with pyramids, deals with water, deals with sound. So those sonic chambers in the pyramids were used to create energy by singing into water jars certain resonant harmonies to create an explosion of light inside the water jar. And this was an energy source, a free and organic green energy source, what we call a perfect system or implosive energy, not explosive energy, which is what the white people of Europe are into. The black people of Africa were into implosive, organic, natural energy. And how from this, they were able to feed and to power their nation. So I'm working very deeply on these mysteries. I will not reveal the formulas I'm being revealed and discovering to the public. Those are only for my royal priests. But we are working on these things. It may take a few years to decades for some of these researches to come to full fruit. It may take a century. It matters not. We simply reincarnate to finish our work, if need be. But it's very exciting. And this word here of Nuti, or Nut meaning a community, through these technologies of cymatic sonic waves, sonoluminescence, and sonic engineering, of how we can feed and take care of our community as a black gay group, how to take care of the black gay community, to feed us, fuel us, energize us, protect us, enlighten us, empower us, and bring us closer to our noble, honorable gay ancestors. So, dua'u for listening. Stay tuned for more videos of this nature where I reveal a bit to the world the deep scientific research being done by our African technologies. May you enjoy taking a swim in the ocean and know that every bubble that you see in the water can become a star. And remember, you are made of 70% water. What if we sang into your water molecules and turned them from water into light? And we use water and sound to actually enlighten people, literally, physically enlighten them. This is a very exciting branch of our research. So stay tuned. Dwao, be strong in Hotepu.